All right, this is a very vintage note, and we're talking about another vintage note today in today's video, and the focus note is Carnation. It's a note that doesn't come up quite often, but I remember it a lot in the 80s, maybe some in the 90s, but 80s and prior. It's a very spicy note and also kind of reminds me of the smell of cloves, and that's what I've got here today. Carnation, a video pulled from my deep dive video on vintage perfume notes, and I consider Carnation to be one of the most vintage perfume notes. What do you guys think? Well, I don't want to say it smells vintage, but I don't see it pop up much in fragrances, and that's why I featured it in the long form deep dive video. And usually what I've been doing is airing deep dive videos in long format, sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours. And I like to take parts of those videos because they're not edited and edit them down and air them separately because some people want to watch those videos in short formats rather than long form formats that I usually air in the deep dive videos. But today it's all about Carnation. Before I talk about the fragrances, I do want to let you guys know about the Scentfest SF, guys. If you haven't heard about it, please check it out. I have it linked in the info box. It's a great 3-day event happening in San Francisco on fragrances, niche fragrances. It's a consumer-focused fair, trade show, and we've got some great houses coming and exhibiting. So you're going to want to come out here, get your tickets, make your travel arrangements, and come and discover some awesome fragrances, and also meet the brands behind the fragrances and do some really awesome fragrance-focused exhibits. But let's go ahead and get started with Carnation. First fragrance I'm going to talk to you about in the Carnation category is Jaipur, Homme, and EDP. Total warm, spicy fragrance that I think it smells pretty darn good today. What do you guys think? I love this. There's a lot of cinnamon. The Carnation blends really beautifully with the cinnamon because it's got those clove-like qualities. There's a lot of amber notes here, vanillic notes, super yummy amber style fragrance with a lot of warm spices, but in a classic way. I remember the first time I smelled this, and I remember where I smelled it. I smelled it at Macy's, and the Macy's associate gave me a ton of samples just to try. And I remember spritzing this on without even buying the bottle with the samples that I had received. And I'm really drooling over the way it smells. It doesn't have that intensity as that did back in the 90s. Those fragrances were super potent, even in eau de toilette. Although it might have been the eau de parfum that she gave me. But whatever it was super, super potent. And this is the eau de parfum, and it doesn't have that intensity I remember. Like it, once you got on your skin, it would stay there for the whole day, if not into the next day. But getting past that, even though this is reformulated, I consider it a really, really awesome fragrance. It was also created by Anique Monardo. Just around the time she did this, she also did Boss Bottled, the OG, the cinnamon and apples. Hey, this one has cinnamon too. So maybe she was going through a phase. Around that time, she also did Bulgari Black, which is actually tea and leather, but that woman has created some awesome fragrances, by the way. She's a great perfumer, and this is definitely one of the best out there. If you haven't tried Jaipur Homme EDP, do try it. The next one I'm talking about is an Estee Lauder classic feminine fragrance called Spellbound. This is in the newer bottle, obviously. This is not the vintage bottle. So you can totally smell the Carnation here, but I feel like it's swimming in a lot of creamy white floral notes. There's vanillic notes in here also, and spices. There's a slight fruitiness there, but totally gives me like a floral bouquet with the warmth and intensity of Carnation. I think it's a solid offering. It might be a bit subdued. I think that's what happens with a lot of these fragrances that are reformulated. Maybe they just lose their luster. They lose their intensity. I think the fragrance is pretty much there, though. It just doesn't have that oomph. But either way, I think Spellbound is quite gorgeous. You do have that fruitiness there, for sure. I don't remember actually when Spellbound came out. Was it the early 90s? But this next fragrance from the house of Maître Parfumeur Gantier called Soie Rouge also features Carnation. But I thought this was launched in '88 when the brand just launched. They have kept the fragrance in its most intense form. So I don't know what happens with some brands reformulations, neutering fragrances, and some just keep it very close. Because a lot of the fragrances at Maître Parfumeur Gantier are older fragrances. And so what happens with those reformulations? Don't they neuter the fragrance like other fragrances? I don't know what happens, but maybe it's just something that we have to deal with. But this Soie Rouge is paying tribute to the Carnation, but there's a fruity element here, but with also, once again, with floral notes. This is a bit more vintage-esque and a bit sharper in comparison to Spellbound. Spellbound had this kind of a creamy fruitiness. This one has more sharpness and overdosed with a lot of spices, the sharp spices, which I'm assuming is something like the Carnation that's giving us that. There's also, whoa. This to me smells very vintage, but in a good way. Spellbound smelled vintage, even though it smelled good. I felt like it was lacking something, if that makes sense. But super fantastic. This also has a fruitiness. Whoa. I'm smelling some stone fruits, like fruits in this. But once again, compare Soie Rouge to Spellbound, the way they wear or the way they smell is night and day different. So what have they done to Spellbound that they haven't done to Soie Rouge from Maître Parfum et Gantier? It's an awesome scent. Very warm, very, very spicy. So the next fragrance, we're going to the house of Parfums de Nicolai. This is Sacrebleu. Is that how you say it in French? So I don't know much about this one. We will talk about it right now. Ooh, this is very, very old school. This is very warm ambery. I like ambery fragrances that have the warm spices, the cinnamons and cloves and nutmeg. They really blend really wonderfully together. This is what's going on with the Carnation in this. I feel like all of these fragrances that I'm smelling, not only do they have Carnation, they also have cinnamon. Really warm, spicy fragrances. Every single one that I've smelled here is warm, spicy, which is kind of cool. I love this style of fragrance. Warm, spicy fragrances are some of my favorites. Wow, that's really good. Both of these vintage style fragrances, Maître Parfum et Gantier, Soie Rouge, and Sacrebleu from the house of Parfums de Nicolai. Really awesome Carnation offerings. And I think these two brands launched around the same time. Didn't they launch in the 80s? I know Maître Parfum et Gantier launched in 88. I could have sworn that Parfums de Nicolai launched in 86. Or was it 89? And the last fragrance I'm going to talk to you about, which I just did a video on, is Tabac Blond from the house of Caron. Do you guys know this one? Now, even though it's a leather fragrance in the old days utilizing castoreum, this also utilized a lot of Carnation to give you that kind of warm, spicy depth. It's also very ambery. If you want to find out more about this fragrance, go catch my full review. It's part of the Caron series of Tabac fragrances. And I mentioned in that video that castoreum had a tobacco-ish nuance about it. So I think that's the reason why it's called Tabac, because there's no real tobacco in this. But it's smoky, it's spicy, slightly animalic, very leathery. And of course the Carnation is there, giving its warm, spicy effect to the fragrance. It definitely doesn't smell like your traditional tobacco fragrance. It doesn't smell like Tabac Exquis from Caron. It doesn't smell like Tabac Noir. There's also their last remaining tobacco fragrance that I have to get and talk about, Tabac Blanc. Doesn't smell like that either, I believe. This is a very vintage style fragrance, and somehow Carnation category turned out to be very old school, very vintage fragrances. But that stuff is awesome. All of these fragrances that I spoke about in the Carnation section, really awesome fragrances, but definitely old school. Thanks so much for watching today's video on Carnation, guys. What are your thoughts on Carnation? Let me know. Do add a comment below. Do you consider it more of a vintage note, or do you find it to be fairly modern? And if you think it's modern, do you see or find fragrances that are featuring this note that are the focus? Because sometimes they might be featured in a modern fragrance, but once you add Carnation, they just will take over. It's that strong and spicy. So that's why I don't see them, because I don't smell them in fragrances. But maybe you've discovered something that is Carnation focused, and let me know what it is. Do add a comment below. But thanks so much for watching today's video, guys. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe, click the bell icon, and also give a thumbs up for this video so it helps with the algorithm. And don't forget to check out ScentFest SF. See you guys later. Bye-bye.